In last video, I talked about what is module in Node.js. In this video, I'll talk about how to do export and import in Node.js. So without any delay, let's hit back to VS Code again. First of all, I'll define a variable, let age is equals to 20. After that, I'll define a function, let func1 is equals to a function. Within the function, I'll do a console, hi there. We already talked about by default every file in Node.js is encapsulated. That means by default other file content is not accessible. This module concept sometimes very helpful, but that doesn't mean it always helpful. Sometimes we need to access other file content. In Node.js, you have to mention which content is accessible outside of this file. For example, this age is accessible outside of this file, or this func1 is accessible outside of this file. And this idea is called module export. Well, there are many ways to do export file content. So let's talk about one by one. First of all, I'll write a syntax. Don't worry, I'll talk about later on. Now I'll write module.exports is equals to this age. Now save the file. By writing this syntax, this variable age is accessible outside of this file. Now access this variable age from other file. For example, from index.js file. Now let's do a console this variable age. Now save the file, open the terminal, run this file, node index.js. But you can see we got an error. This age is not defined. What is going on here? I already mentioned this variable age is accessible outside of this file. Now why they are showing this type of error? When you want to access outside file content, then you have to mention which content specifically you want to access. For example, from app.js file, maybe you or someone else want to share this variable age or func1, and out of them, which one specifically you want to use. That means you have to mention specifically which one you may want to use. This idea is called module import. I hope the naming convention makes sense to you as well. Export means you are setting permission to access from a file. Import means you are accessing outside file content. Now let's see how to do import. I'll write another syntax. Don't worry, I will also discuss it later on. To import, first of all, declare a variable. In this case, this is age. So I'll write let age is equals to. After that, I'll write require. Then set a parenthesis. Then write single quote or double quote, no matter which one you may wish to use. After that, mention the target file. If the target file is the siblings of current file, then you have to write / then the file name. In our case, file name is app.js. You do not need to pass here .js. Node.js automatically grab this .js. If target file is one step up, then you have to pass / then slash. If target file belongs to other folder, then you have to use / then the folder name. For example, folder 1 is the siblings of current file, so / then the folder 1. After that, within this folder 1, we have folder 2 and file1.js file. And within this folder 2, we have file2.js file. If target file is file2.js, then you have to pass /folder2, and after that, we have to pass /file2.js. Here .js is optional. Now I hope you make sense. In our case, target file is siblings of current file, so I'll pass /app. Now console this variable age. Now save the file, clear the terminal, run the file node index.js, and you can see 20 output. If you want to export func1 instead of this age, then what you can do? You can write func1. Go to index.js file. Now write here func1. In this case, func1 is a function. So instead of this printing console, I'll call this function. Save the file. Again run the file node index.js. We can see hide their output. So when we write module.exports and assign something, then this is called default export. In default export, it is not necessary to have the same name. For example, in this case, this is func1. So it's not necessary it should be func1. It can be anything else. For example, it can be xyz. If I change it xyz, save the file, run the file, Node.index.js, we can see hi there output. Alright, if you wish, then you can do export multiple content at a time. When you do export multiple items at a time, then you may export as object. For example, we'll export this as and func1 as object. So as, this as, func1, this func1. Let's again go to index.js file. Now do a console this xyz. Save the file, run the file again, node index.js. In this case, we got an object. We can see as20 and func1 is another function. Now we can print out this as from this xyz object. Run the file, node index.js. We can see 20 output. Within this xyz, func1 is a function. So let's call this function xyz.func1 and call it. Save the file, run the file, node index.js. We can see hi there output. We can use ES6 shorthand syntax. If key and value are same, then you can use only one. It also works perfectly fine. Another type of export we can use, and that is name export. For now, remove this default export, then write export, then dot, then set an export name. In our case, this is gender, and set the gender value is male. Now it is going to declare a variable and as well as export this variable. Now again go to index.js file, remove all, then I will use let or const or var keyword. Then I will set a curly bracket. Within this curly bracket, I will set the import name. In this case, import name is gender. Keep in your mind, in name export, it has to be same name that you have set here. In our case, I have set here gender. Then write require. And after that, set the file path. After that, console this gender. Now save the file, run the file, node index.js. We can see male output. So that's all about Node.js file import and export, and that's all for this lecture. I'll see you next video.